Um, and so I'm going to kind of take it back to that. So, what do you feel like your confidence in being able to speak to like a frog executive and say, "Hey, I'm not the shoe guy. We could walk out of here." Do you feel like that confidence came from, "Hey, I talked back to Michael Jordan." Does that play a role in there? And then I guess like how did like working how much did working with Michael Jordan influence how you work stakeholders in a project? And I guess what are some more lessons that you learned from there?
And I think it had to go back to, I mentioned Tinker Hatfield, who designed Jordans 3 through 15, and Tinker is trained as an architect. And he told me, and I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with Tinker, and he told me the first time the Jordan 3 was only like the second or third shoe he ever designed. And the first was like the Air Max 1, so he was starting from a good spot. But he told me he worked with Michael the way an architect would work with a client when they're building a house for them, and just really tried to, again, work collaboratively and pull things out of him. And I think that probably influenced Michael and the way he worked with designers, which then influenced me in the way I worked with him. But I think he definitely was someone, and maybe we share this in common, who doesn't suffer fools lightly. Like, he wants you to be plain spoken, doesn't want you to dance around it. And so I guess that did train me a little bit to be, um, I wouldn't say I'm overly blunt, but I'm very direct. Like, I'll frame it in a way that I think hopefully you can hear it. I'm not just gonna be rude or crass, but I'm not gonna shy away from telling you the truth. And again, as a consultant, if you hired me to tell you the temperature outside, I'm in Portland today, and it's 34 degrees out right now. I'm not gonna tell you it's 72 and sunny just because that's what you wanna hear. I have to tell you what it really is out there. Um, and so, yeah, that's just I think my way of just operating in the world with people, but I do think it builds a lot of trust with the people I'm working with. I remember I won't say the brand name, but I was working with this kind of women's performance apparel brand. I won't say anything else to give it away. But they felt they had and it was an old brand, it'd been around for 20, 30 years. And they felt they had a lot of equity in the name. And I was trying to explain to them that people don't know what this brand is. And they're like, "No, of course they do." And I'm like, "Of course you do. You love it. You work there. You should. But we need to get out of your head and into the head of the young woman you're trying to appeal to." They weren't listening to me, and that's okay. I understand. I'm like this white guy consultant coming in from the outside saying nobody knows your brand. And I understand it was a very hard message. And I was like, okay, can we set up some focus groups to talk to women? So we set up focus groups in San Francisco, LA, and San Diego. And so we asked women in their 20s, had they ever heard of this brand before? And no one had heard of this brand. So like the second was like, okay, and I was trying to explain to them, not only had they not heard of this brand, but it just wasn't a good brand to build on name wise. And it's like, okay, you haven't heard of this brand. Um, what, knowing that this brand makes products for women, based on the way the name sounds, what do you think they make? And the most common response was feminine hygiene products. And the president of the brand, she was with us at all these focus groups, and it was just a real eye opener. And I just didn't know. And I was like, I know you didn't. That's okay. Like, but now that you do know, how are we going to move forward? Because I want you to be successful. You make a great product. Let's figure out a way forward now that we know this. And so anyway, that's the way I try to work with people. And it's not always comfortable. I don't want to tell these things either, but you have to do it because at the end of the day, if I don't, the products aren't going to be successful and they're not going to hire me again anyway. So it's better to have the uncomfortable conversation and hopefully move them towards something that's going to be successful, which is going to be better for them, which in turn is better for me in the end too. I'm happy to trade that uncomfortable present moment for a future great moment.
Oh, absolutely. And how do you have Like, how did you come to that conclusion that no one knew about the brand?
That was this I just some I'm a big fan of kinda guerrilla research, and I asked a bunch I had a feeling, I had an intuition, and then I started informally asking people, and then I started getting this response, and I was like, "Oh, man, I think there's, like, a base level problem over and above because this women's performance apparel brand wanted to get into performance footwear, and I was like, I can't, again, in good conscience, let you invest all this money in performance footwear when you have this base other core issue that's gonna prevent it from being successful." Um, and so they had been acquired by a bigger, um, running brand that was just more gender neutral, and so I think the right output from that was that basically they absorbed the smaller brand and just took those really great products for women and made them a part of the bigger, performance running brand, which was the right move because that brand had very positive brand equity versus trying to convince people to like this awkward sounding name.